Katie Crysdale here with Lakeview Aquatic Consultants. Welcome back. In this week's video, I want to take a quick look at Alberta Health Services pool disclosures. This video won't apply if you don't work at or operate a swimming pool or hot tub here in Alberta, but the principles still apply because different provinces and jurisdictions have public disclosure of health inspection results. As a little bit of background, in March 2000, Alberta Health Services, which is the public health authority here in Alberta, Canada, started posting all swimming pool, hot tub, spray park inspections on their website. This is a long time coming. The customer has a right to know about the cleanliness of any type of public facility they choose to patronize, whether it is a restaurant, nail salon, tattoo parlor, daycare, swimming pool. Making these inspection results easy for the layperson to access is a very important step, in my opinion. It also serves the public good in terms of encouraging facilities that have struggled with their compliance, operations, cleanliness to really step up their game, because now there is a public record on the internet for an indeterminate period of time of those violations, enforcement orders, closures that anybody can access. I wanted to briefly explain the different types of inspection reports, because that is a frequent point of confusion when I'm teaching pool operator classes. There's 3 different types reported on the AHS website. We're going to talk about what those are, what they mean, and what those may mean if you are looking at the results for a facility that you want to visit. To start, here in Alberta, all pool inspections are listed on the Alberta Health Services AHS website. So I just Googled AHS pool inspection. I can click on, and it will take me to the main landing page to be able to look up pools here in Alberta. I can also look up restaurants under food. Personal services will include tattoos, piercing, and nails, and childcare facilities are also covered. You can sort specifically by city. You can sort by community. I have had the best success typing in part of the name, as long as it is specific enough, it doesn't pull up too many results. For example, if I type in mountain, we have a lot of hotels in Alberta with the name mountain. You're going to come up with a lot of results. I like the partial search to narrow down exactly what facility I'm looking at. I picked a facility I've never worked at. We're going to look at the recreation center in Beaumont, Alberta. Beaumont is a city located just south of Edmonton. I'm going to go ahead and type for Beaumont. As you can see, there's quite a number of results. So you do need to sort through and figure out exactly which facility you would like to look at. In a bigger facility, if you have a swimming pool, hot tub, and a water slide with a runout, each of those basins will be tracked and labeled separately in the Alberta Health Services record. For the Beaumont Sport and Recreation Center, there are identification numbers for the common areas. That would include public areas, showers, and change rooms. We have the hot tub. We have what they describe as the leisure pool, maybe more of a kid's pool, and then the main pool, which could be the 25-meter pool or the lap pool. Sometimes the nomenclature is not totally clear, but we can see that there are separate listings for each of these basins, as well as the spray park. Let's go ahead and click on the leisure pool. We can see all 3 types of inspections: a monitoring inspection, a risk management inspection, and a demand inspection. We're going to pop those out in just a moment and take a look at what was cited, but I want to start by giving definitions. The way it was described to me by a health inspector, a monitoring inspection is a routine inspection based on risk frequency of the facility. A risk management inspection, described to me as a re-inspection to follow up on previously noted deficiencies. Those deficiencies could be non-critical or critical, leading to an enforcement order. I should note that enforcement orders are located on a completely different part of the website. The 3rd type of inspection is a demand inspection, as being due to a complaint, review, or approval. Demand is also going to be necessary when there is any sort of bad bacterial water test result that requires follow-up. Complaints can be made through most jurisdictions, including in Alberta. There is a complaint form where you can submit a complaint anonymously about a facility. I have only done this once. I was driving around visiting different facilities, and I stopped at an outdoor pool in Alberta where it was extremely cloudy water. In my opinion, there was probably a high level of cyanuric acid. It was impossible to see the bottom of the pool, and that was concerning to me as a lifeguard. I filled out the anonymous form. I provided detailed information about the site address, the date of my visit, photos, and a health inspector called me maybe 2 days later to discuss my report. I don't know what happened thereafter, but essentially, if you ever eat at a restaurant and end up feeling sick, you get a piercing and it ends up infected, there is a public mechanism to privately report your concerns, and those will be forwarded to the right person to investigate. That could be a complaint. There could also be review or approval on a new construction, new addition to the facility. And then, as I said, a demand inspection is also necessary after a facility has failed their weekly water test. Here in Alberta, bacterial water testing is required by law weekly of every basin, open and available for use. So if your bacteria results come back with more than 100 heterotropic plate counts in bacteria, that is the maximum acceptable threshold level, whether it is 105 or 5,000 HTUs, your facility will get a call from the public health inspector in your region prescribing a course of action or asking what you are intending to do given there is a higher than acceptable amount of bacteria in your pool. Let's look at some of these inspections directly on the AHS website. These reports only start being posted as of March 2023. Records prior to that are not scanned into the internet. They exist and you could make a request to see older inspections. But generally, I would say this is plenty of data to work from if you're simply looking to decide which hotel you want to stay at. Clicking back to the monitoring inspection, remember we said a monitoring inspection is routine based on the risk frequency of the facility. During a monitoring inspection, there was inconsistencies in the chemical levels. The pH was read below the minimum standard. pH in Alberta should be maintained between 6.8 and 7.6. At two different locations in this basin, the water was considered non-compliant, below that at 6.6 and 6.7. At that point in time, they also did not have their anti-entrapment plan done. Clicking ahead to the demand inspection, demand is going to be a complaint or review of approval. Here we can see there was a failure of the bacteria water sample. The bacteria was at a count of 250 HPC, so not in compliance, and they were asked to retest the water. And while on site, the health inspector did do a follow-up on the previous pH in the water, and it was still not in compliance. Then they had follow-up on September 8th. Another bacteria water sample failed on September 5th. From the resample in May to the beginning of September, all of those weekly water samples were compliant. There is no record here of deficiencies, so it can be assumed that they were compliant. They were under that 100 HPC count. And there was follow-up on the previous violations, still not in compliance when it comes to the pH or written policies, including the anti-entrapment plan. Health inspector came back again to check and followed up on the water sample from September 5th. Further action was required. And then they came back on November 10th for a monitoring inspection. A monitoring inspection being a routine inspection of the facility. No action was required, no violations were cited, so things were resolved. Coming back on December 11th, they had another bacterial water sample fail, 230 HPC count. Certainly, we never want to have bacteria in the water. We never want to fail our water test sample. However, I will say that 230 is relatively low compared to I have seen numbers as high as 700, 800, 2,000, 3,000. It is concerning that there is a pattern of insufficient disinfection throughout the water body. We have to take remedial action, close the pool, and elevate the free available chlorine for an extended period of time. in discussion with the health inspector. But in the scheme of things, this is a reflection of inconsistencies in chemical disinfection. How are the feeders working? Are there any plugged injectors? Is there poor staff management in terms of time and tasks? Is there inconsistencies in water testing? There's usually a root cause as to why. It's not one dirty person brought bacteria to the pool and this happened. Health inspector came back in January for a risk management inspection. Risk management is a re-inspection to follow up on previously noted deficiencies, and the violations were corrected. There were no new violations to report. Then for 10 months, there was no action required. The health inspector came back for their routine monitoring inspection at whatever frequency is set in their software or calendar. They came back on November 18th, and there were no violations, no action required. So I would say this is a pretty routine set of inspections. This is not particularly concerning to me. I have seen facilities with far more violations, and I've also seen facilities with far fewer violations. Certainly, we would like to have no violations whatsoever, but I am realistic as we've come out of the COVID-19 pandemic. There hasn't been good continuity of training, onboarding. Pool operations knowledge has been largely lost in a lot of these facilities. So it's not unsurprising to see some bumps in the road, as it were, as facilities get back online with figuring out what they need to be doing in their routine pool operations and working towards better pool hygiene. Let's have a look here at enforcement orders. Those are the facilities that were shut down at the time that they were inspected. I Google AHS enforcement order. You can also do closure order. Then I'm going to go to the landing page. And then here it is separated by zone. So north zone would be everything north of Edmonton. Edmonton zone and Calgary zone being large urban areas, central zone covering Calgary to Edmonton, including Red Deer, and then your south zone covering everything south of Calgary, places like Medicine Hat and Lethbridge. Let's go ahead and click on the south zone. Then if we go down here and we click the separate tabs, we have our drinking water, wells that need to be inspected on commercial sites, food establishments, our restaurants and food trucks or food carts, housing, any sort of public housing or commercial housing that gets inspected, recreation areas. This is primarily going to be campgrounds, personal services, tattoos, nail salons, piercings, nuisance. This is going to be things like hoarding, public health issues, and then social care, day homes, whether for small children or disabled adults. The one I'd like to show you is from the Flamingo Hotel in Medicine Hat. This was a closure order that came about in April 2024. It is going to pop open as a letter. This letter is provided to ownership because the facility is now closed and will have to go through a remediation process to have their permit to operate reinstated by the province. It is a public record and it should be posted at the facility. Here we go through and it names the corporation that owns the hotel, the owners by name, if that information is available, as well as the director. It physically names the site. Then it tells you pursuant to what public code, what issues arose during the inspection that necessitates the immediate closure. I, as part of my business, go through AHS enforcement orders every 1 to 2 months. I like to see what's happening in our province, what types of violations are out there. This one letter covers everything under the sun. That's why it's worth showing you. This goes back to the Alberta pool standards and regulations. That is the framework under which this inspection is happening. The most glaring violation, in my personal opinion, because this is all just my commentary on this public record, is that routine water samples have not been submitted for bacteriological testing since November of 2022. For almost 2 years, until April of 2024, there has been no required by law weekly water sample testing. It's very, very concerning because you cannot operate a pool in Alberta, any basin, without weekly water testing. In that vein, it's not surprising the free available chlorine was measured below the minimum requirement of 1. There are some variations where we can have a lower amount of free available chlorine if there is an acceptable ORP, but 0.08 is never acceptable. The automated chemical feeding and monitoring system was not working. So this was all hand dosing if somebody was even taking care of the pool properly, which I doubt. The pH on the controller was at a very dangerous 8.5. We hope the controller was not working because, as they say, it was not consistent with a manual test of 7.29. We never want to have somebody swimming in a high pH of 8.5, but it also means that nobody was taking action to respond to a level that appeared to be dangerous in part of the system. The flow meter was not working at the time of the inspection, so it's not possible to calculate the turnover rate that is required in the province per the age of the pool. There is a single blockable main drain, and it does not have the correct suction entrapment system. Here in Alberta, as of 2019, we did roll out anti-entrapment plans, including properly installing drain covers and certifying they are routinely inspected. If you have an older swimming pool in Alberta that does have a single main drain, it is grandfathered that you are allowed to use that facility pool, but you do have to add on secondary anti-entrapment precautions, such as emergency shutoff systems, a backlist system. You can't just rely on the drain cover because of the known hazards of only having one drain. Here it further goes on to say that the submerged suction outlet covers, the main drain, was not being inspected daily. This is required in your Section 9 anti-entrapment plan. There was algae of 2 feet by 2 feet growing on the tiles in the shallow end. There were no written policies, including safety plans, cleaning schedules, pool contamination response. This is your Section 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 of the pool standards and required of every facility here in Alberta. And no anti-entrapment plan was available. So they didn't know the age of the drain cover, when it was installed. Is it the correct size relative to the pump curve, relative to the flow of water? And then it goes on to say what specific breaches in the Public Health Act occurred to the actual legal criteria in the Alberta Pool Standards and Regulation. And in order, the pool is closed until further notice. And the following steps must be taken for the pool to receive its new operating permit. Weekly water samples have to be conducted. Free chlorine must be kept above 1. Chemical feeders need to be working properly, and the automation, the monitoring system needs to be working. Flow meter needs to be working, and the flow needs to be measured to calculate the turnover in line with the minimum turnover for the age of this pool and the time of construction. They need to add in a secondary device. They need to do their daily inspections of the drain cover, clean the pool, kill the algae, scrub it off, develop written policies, and also get the whirlpool assessed, because this was all on the swimming pool. So these will stay up as long as the facility is closed. When a situation is cleared, the closure order will be removed, and then you could go find this facility on the regular inspection page. So I hope you found that explanation helpful of the different types of closure orders. So I hope you found this explanation helpful. I wanted to explain a monitoring inspection versus a risk management inspection versus a demand inspection. Your jurisdiction, your province, your state may have its own terminology. If you have any questions, please feel free to pop a comment below. Thanks so much for being here, and we'll catch you in the next video.